My mother lifted her wine, smiled at the head table, and told 200 guests that I only got invited out of pity. The family charity case, she called me, and the whole table laughed. I did not stand. I did not set down my glass. I slid one hand under the white tablecloth, found the blue folder in my lap, and held it a little tighter. Then I let them laugh. Here is what none of them knew, not one of the 200. For 9 years, I had been the charity in that family. The roof every one of them slept under had a name on the deed, and it was not my mother's. By the time the cake was cut that night, the laughing would stop. It would not start again for a long while. My name is Hannah Mercer. I was 33 the summer my brother Cody got married, in a rented barn an hour south of Tiffin, Ohio, with string lights, a borrowed dance floor, and 200 folding chairs my mother had counted twice. I did not cry. I almost never do. That is close to the actual word for my job. I am a claims and billing reconciler at a regional clinic back home. I find the one wrong number hiding in 10,000 right ones. 3 days before that wedding, I pulled a $34 duplicate lab fee out of a batch 4 people had already signed off as clean. $34 in a six-figure file. Everybody else saw a finished page. I saw the 34. That is the whole job. I sit with the numbers until they tell me the truth, and numbers always do. I don't get loud. I reconcile. So, when my mother called me a charity case in front of 200 people, I did what I do at my desk every morning. I noted it. You do not yell at a wrong number. You write it down, you put it where it belongs, and then you wait. The barn smelled like sawdust, barbecue, and somebody's heavy perfume. My mother, Diane Mercer, stood at the head table in a dress the color of good champagne, the kind of dress that does not come from Tiffin. She raised her glass to Cody and his new wife, Sarah, and she said all the warm things a mother says. Then she got to me. Now, some of you have met my daughter Hannah, she said, soft and fond, like she was about to hand me a gift. She's family, and in this family we carry our own, even the ones who can't quite keep up. A few people chuckled. She waited for it, the way you wait for a wave to come in. So yes, Hannah's here tonight, she went on. Every family's got one. The charity case. We love her anyway. And the table laughed. Cody laughed, with his arm around Sarah. My father studied his plate like there was something written on it. 200 strangers in folding chairs laughed at a joke they did not understand, and I sat at table 14, the one shoved against the kitchen doors, where the servers kept clipping the back of my chair with their trays. That is where they put me. Table 14, by the kitchen. I want you to hold on to that number, because I had written the check for that barn. I had covered the deposit on those folding chairs, the champagne in my mother's glass, the string lights overhead, the band that had not started playing yet. A good piece of all of it had come out of an account with my name on it. And they sat me by the kitchen doors and called me Charity. I did not say a word. I kept both hands flat on the blue folder under the cloth, and I let her finish. There was a thing my grandfather used to tell me. The louder a thing gets, the easier it is to argue with. I was not going to argue. I was going to be quiet and exact and right. But to understand why I was so calm with my mother's voice still ringing off the rafters, you have to go back, not to the wedding, to a kitchen on Sycamore Street, 9 years before, the day everything quietly turned and nobody but me and one old man noticed. We grew up in a white house on Sycamore Street, in Tiffin, where the Mercers had lived for 30 years. It had a sagging front porch my father kept promising to fix, 2 big maples out front, and a screen door that slapped shut on its own. Everybody on the street knew it. The Mercer place. It was the kind of house that felt like it would stand there forever, holding the whole family up, no matter what we did inside it. There were two of us, Cody and me. Cody was the youngest, the boy, the easy one. I was older by 4 years, and somewhere along the line I became the useful one, which is a different thing from the loved one, though it took me most of my life to learn that. If something broke, they called me. If a bill came in printed in red, it came to my hands. When I was 16, I balanced my mother's checkbook because she said numbers gave her a headache. When I was 20, I co-signed Cody's first car. Being useful was the rent I paid to stay in that family, and I paid it gladly. When you are the strong one, you tell yourself the others would do the same for you. You just never get to find out. The one person who saw it plainly was my grandfather, Raymond Hollis, my mother's father. He had hands like cracked leather and could fix anything with a motor in it, and he watched the way they leaned on me with a look I did not understand until much later. The year I turned 24, the bank sent a letter to Sycamore Street that my mother left sitting on the counter for 3 weeks. My father had lost his hours at the plant. The mortgage was 4 months behind. The letter used a hard word for what came next. They were going to lose the house, the Mercer place, the one that was supposed to hold all of us up. So I did what I always did. I stepped in, I took over the mortgage. I was 24, single, renting a one-bedroom across town, and I set up an automatic payment of $2,400 a month out of my own account on the first, every month, to Heartland Credit Union. My grandfather did one thing I did not expect. He drove me down to the county recorder's office himself, in his old truck that smelled like motor oil and peppermint. He said if I was going to carry the house, then the house was going to carry my name. He made them put the deed in my name, just mine. Hannah Mercer, in Plain County, Inc. My mother signed off on it at the time because she was embarrassed and behind, and it made her problem disappear. And because I do not think she ever once believed I would actually own anything. To her, it was paperwork, a formality the charity case handled so the real family could go on living the way they liked. When it was done, when the deed was recorded and the first payment had cleared, my grandfather handed me an envelope. Plain, sealed. My name on the front in his blocky handwriting. Under my name, he had written a single line. Open it when they say it out loud. I asked him what that meant. When who says what out loud? He just patted the dashboard of the truck and said, "You'll know the night, kiddo." You won't have to wonder. I did not open it. I put it in a blue accordion folder along with the deed and that first payment receipt, and I kept that folder for 9 years. I added every statement to it, every receipt, every year of carrying that house, filed by month, the way I file everything. The envelope stayed sealed in the back pocket. Some nights I almost tore it open, but Raymond had a way of being right that made you want to wait for the proof, so I waited. He passed 2 winters later, quietly, in his sleep, with the truck still parked in the driveway. After that, I was the only one who knew the whole shape of it. The deed, the payments, the envelope I had not opened. The family went right on calling the place the Mercer House, and my mother went right on saying her favorite line at every holiday, the same one she would use at the wedding 9 years later. We carry our own. She said it like she was running it up a flagpole. We carry our own. She said it over Thanksgiving turkeys and Christmas hams in that warm, certain voice, while I made the payment on the first and said nothing. 9 years, 108 payments, $2,400 at a time, into a house full of people who thought I was the one being carried. The wedding came together fast that spring. Cody and Sarah picked the barn outside Columbus, the expensive one with the string lights and the catalog photo, and the asks started landing on me, the way they always did. 5,000 for the venue deposit, then a number for the catering, then a number for the band. My mother would call and float it lightly, like she was doing me a kindness by letting me chip in. You're so good with this kind of thing, Hannah. I paid. Of course I paid. I told myself it was for Cody, but 3 weeks before the wedding, she called about money one more time, and the number she used did not match the number I knew. She talked about the house being tight right now, about the loan, about payments she said were squeezing them half to death, and I sat there with the phone against my ear and felt that old, quiet click in my chest, the one I feel at my desk when a page is wrong before I can even see where. There was no loan. I was the loan. Mine was the only payment that house had ever known. So why was my mother talking about one like it belonged to her? That night, I went to the closet, took down the blue accordion folder, and carried it to my kitchen table. 9 years of it. I laid it all out flat, the deed on top, the sealed envelope still tucked in the back, and I began doing the one thing my family had never once given me credit for. I started to count. Counting is the one thing they handed me young and never thought to take back. It gave my mother headaches, so it became mine. The way the dishes became mine, and the bills became mine, and the hard phone calls became mine. That night at my kitchen table, with the house gone quiet and the coffee going cold at my elbow, I was grateful for it in a way I had not been in years. I made 4 stacks. On the left, every statement Heartland Credit Union had ever mailed me, oldest on the bottom, 9 years deep, the paper at the bottom of the pile gone soft and yellow at the corners. On the right, my own bank records, every single withdrawal of $2,400, drawn on the first of every month, lined up like fence posts. In the middle, the deed in its plastic sleeve, my name sitting there in plain county ink where Raymond had put it. And off to the side, turned face down so I would not have to look at it, my grandfather's sealed envelope. Then I did the only thing I have ever really known how to do. I reconciled. Line by line, the way I work at my desk every morning. I took each payment that had left my account and I found where it landed on the mortgage. February of one year, March of the next. The month my furnace died and I made the payment anyway. The Christmas I worked a double so the first would clear without me having to think about it. 108 payments. I matched every one of them to the penny, and every one of them was there, and every one of them was mine. The mortgage reconciled perfectly, so perfectly that it should have made me feel better, and instead, it made the skin on my arms go cold. Because my mother had stood in her kitchen on Sycamore Street 3 weeks before and told me the house was being squeezed half to death. She had said the word loan. She had talked about payments that were eating them alive, payments I had never seen, payments that did not exist on any page in front of me. There was one payment that house had ever known, and it was sitting in a stack on my right, current, clean, paid by me. 2 stories. And at the clinic, I have learned the one true thing about 2 stories that cannot both be right. One of them is a lie, and the lie is always hiding somewhere you cannot see from where you are standing. I had reconciled everything I could touch. Whatever was wrong on a page I did not have. There is only one person in Seneca County who has every page of that house. Her name is Gloria Banks, and she has managed the Heartland branch on Washington Street for as long as I have been paying that mortgage. I went the next morning, before work, in the good gray cardigan I wear when I want to be taken seriously. The Heartland branch is small. 2 teller windows and a coffee machine that has never once worked, and Gloria's desk sits behind a low wooden rail with a little brass nameplate she has had so long the lettering has worn soft. She is a careful woman, reading glasses on a beaded chain, A pen she clicks when she is thinking, a way of lining up the edges of a stack of paper before she will so much as look at it. In 9 years, I had come to understand that Gloria and I are the same kind of animal. We both believe the numbers more than we believe the people. She knew me on sight. She always has. I am the only person who has ever walked into that branch about the Sycamore Street account, year after year, and she has handed me a receipt across that rail more times than either of us could count. "Hannah Mercer," she said, and she smiled. And then she looked at my face and the smile went careful. "What do you need, honey?" "I need to understand my account," I said. "All of it. Not just the mortgage. Everything that touches the house on Sycamore." She did not ask me why. That is the other thing about Gloria. She has watched that family lean on me across her rail for 9 years, and a woman who lines up the edges of paper for a living notices who is doing the carrying. She put on the glasses, turned her monitor a few degrees toward herself, and started to type. I watched her pull it up. I watched her find the auto payment history, the long, clean column of 2,400s, the first of every month, and I watched something in her shoulders settle, because that part was hers too. She had logged every one of those payments for 9 years. They reconciled on her screen exactly the way they reconciled on my table. "There it is," she said, almost fond, steady as a clock. 108 payments, never late, not once. She clicked the pen. "You should be proud of that. Most people I see in this chair, they would have walked away from a house that wasn't even." She stopped. I have spent my whole working life learning to read the exact moment a careful person finds something wrong. It is not loud. It is the opposite of loud. It is a small stillness, a held breath, the cursor going quiet on the screen. Gloria went still in just that way. Her eyes moved down the monitor, then back up, then down again, the way you read a number a second time because the first time it did not make sense. "Hannah," she said slowly, "when did you open the line of credit?" The coffee in my stomach turned over. "I didn't open any line of credit. There's a home equity line on this property." She clicked the pen once and then set it down flat, which I would come to understand was Gloria taking something seriously. "Against the house on Sycamore. Opened in February." She looked at me over the top of the glasses. "The limit is $85,000. There has already been 61,000 drawn against it. The barn outside Columbus, the string lights in the catalog photo, the deposit, the catering, the band, the dress the color of good champagne that did not come from Tiffin. 5,000 here and a number there. All of it floated to me so lightly, all of it landing somewhere I had thought I understood. I had thought I was paying for it out of one pocket. I had not known there was a second pocket, and that the second pocket had been cut into the side of a house I owned with a knife that had my name on the handle. "Gloria," I said, and my voice came out level, which surprised me. I have never signed for a line of credit in my life. I have never been in this branch for anything but the mortgage. You would have been the one to process it. Was I ever in this chair in February, signing anything? She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "No, you weren't." And she reached for her mouse with the slow deliberateness of a woman who has just realized the floor under her own branch is not where she thought it was. "It was processed at the Fostoria office," she said. "Not here. Mailed in documents, notarized off-site." She pulled something up, turned the monitor toward me at last, and there it was. A loan application, a signature page, and on the signature line, in blue ink, my own name, Hannah Mercer. It is a strange thing to look at your name in your own hand and know your hand never made it. Whoever wrote it had tried. They had my capital H, the way it leans. They had the loop I put on the Y. But I have signed my name 250,000 times in my life. I sign claims and ledgers and reconciliation sheets all day long, and I know the private architecture of my own signature the way you know the weight of your own front door. The R was wrong. The R was somebody else's R, and the tail I drag off the final R of Mercer, the little flat line I have ended my name with since I was 16 and balancing my mother's checkbook, was not there at all. It was close. It was close enough for a notary in Fostoria who had never met me. It was not mine. That isn't my signature, I said. Gloria did not say, "Of course it is," or "Are you sure?" or any of the soft things people say to slow a moment down. She is not built that way. She got up, went to the gray filing cabinets along the back wall, and came back with a folder of her own. The original Assumption documents from 9 years ago. The day Raymond drove me down in the truck, and the house took my name. She laid the old signature page beside the new one on the desk between us. My real name, 9 years old, next to my name in February. We both looked. We are the same kind of animal. We did not need to say it out loud. The flat tail, the R, the pressure where I bear down on the M. 100 small, honest things in the old one and in the new one, a careful, patient forgery that had gotten everything right except the parts you cannot see unless you are the hand that made them. Gloria sat back down. She took off the reading glasses, let them fall to the end of the beaded chain, and pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of her nose for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. It had gone into a register I had never heard from her in 9 years. Flat and procedural and quiet. The voice of a woman stepping very carefully because she knows exactly how far the fall is. "Hannah, I need you to listen to me, and I need you to not say anything to anybody about this until I tell you it's all the way documented." She slid a legal pad toward herself and uncapped a pen. "If that signature is not yours, and I do not believe that it is, then this is not a family disagreement. A signature that does not match on a secured loan is a fraud matter. There is a process for it. The institution opens a review. I pull the originals, I pull your verified signature history, which I happen to have 9 years of, sitting right here in my own files, and I send it up. While that review is open, the lender places a hold. Nothing moves on that line. And there is something the people who did this very likely did not think about." She looked up at me. "You cannot borrow against a house you do not own. So the very first thing the review is going to ask is, who actually holds title to the property on Sycamore Street?" I reached into my bag and took out the blue accordion folder. I had carried it in without quite knowing why, the way I had carried it everywhere for 9 years. I slid the deed out of its plastic sleeve and laid it on the desk on top of the 2 signatures. My name in county ink, recorded the year I turned 24, the year Raymond made the recorder put it there, and would not leave the office until it was done. Gloria looked at the deed for a long moment. Then she looked at me, and something moved behind her careful face that I think, in another woman, would have been the start of a smile. "Well," she said softly, "isn't that something? They borrowed $61,000 against a house that has belonged to you, free and clear of all of them, since before this loan was a thought in anyone's head." She picked her pen back up. "Whoever signed your name was so busy spending the money, they never once stopped to wonder whose name was already on the wall." She wrote the date at the top of the legal pad. She wrote my name, my real name, in her own careful hand. And then she began, line by line, to build the file. I sat in that chair in the Heartland branch on Washington Street, while Gloria Banks did the thing my whole family had spent my whole life telling me I was too small and too dull to matter at. She kept the receipts. She had always kept the receipts. For 9 years, while my mother stood over holiday hams and ran her favorite words up the flagpole, we carry our own. A careful woman 2 miles away had been quietly logging every dollar that proved exactly who was carrying whom. I did not get loud. I never do. I sat with Gloria, and we reconciled the lie out of the truth the same way I pull a $34 error out of a six-figure file. Slowly, completely, until there was nowhere left for it to hide. When it was done for the day, when Gloria had copies and originals and a review number written in her own hand on the inside cover, I drove to the clinic and I worked my whole shift, and I found a wrong number in somebody else's batch, and I fixed it, because the world does not stop needing its numbers reconciled just because yours have come apart. That night I added 2 new pages to the blue folder, the forged signature, beside my real one, and Gloria's review number, in her steady block printing. I slid them in behind the deed, in front of the sealed envelope my grandfather had left me, the one with the line written under my name in his blocky hand. Open it when they say it out loud. The wedding was 9 days away. And my mother, I knew, the way I knew the weight of my own front door, would stand up in that barn an hour south of Tiffin, in the dress that did not come from here, in front of 200 folding chairs she had counted twice, and she would not be able to help herself. She would raise her glass, and she would say something about me, out loud, the way she always did. I put the folder by the door. I left the envelope sealed. Then I went to find something to wear to my brother's wedding. The dress I found at the consignment shop on Market Street, 2 blocks from the clinic, a navy thing with a high neck that the woman at the counter said made me look like a school teacher, and I told her that was exactly what I was going for. It cost $26. I did not buy it to compete with a barn full of string lights. I bought it because it had pockets, and I had learned a long time ago that a woman who carries things needs somewhere to put her hands. I hung it on the back of my closet door next to the blue accordion folder, which I had stopped putting away. And for 9 days, I looked at the two of them every morning while I drank my coffee standing up, and I reconciled myself to what was coming the way I reconcile everything, slowly, completely, until there is nowhere left for the fear to hide. Diane called me twice that week. Once to ask if I could bring an extra case of the good water down to the venue because the order had come up short, and once, 2 days before, to remind me that the seating had been a nightmare and that she had done the very best she could with what she had to work with. I knew what that meant before she said it. I had heard her say the very best she could with what she had to work with my entire life, and it had always, every single time, meant that I was the thing she had to work with. I said that was fine. I said I would find my seat. I did not get loud. I reconcile. I wrote the case of water on the list by my door, and I bought it, and I loaded it into my trunk next to the folder. And on the morning of the wedding, I drove an hour south, out of Seneca County, down past the flat green fields and the grain elevators and the towns that get smaller before they get bigger, toward Columbus and the barn. It was a beautiful place. I will say that plainly because it was true, and because every beautiful thing about it had been bought with money that did not exist. The barn sat at the end of a gravel lane lined with whitewashed fence, and somebody had strung the lights I had seen in the catalog photograph across the whole open mouth of it, hundreds of them, warm and low against the gray afternoon, so that the inside glowed like the belly of something kind. There were round tables in white linen. There were mason jars with wildflowers that had been trucked in from a farm 2 counties over. There was a champagne tower near the dance floor, real glass, and a band setting up in the corner with a stand-up bass, and a dress, when the bride finally came down the aisle on the arm of a man I had never met. the exact color of good champagne, the color I had seen in a photograph on my mother's phone the day she told me the house was being squeezed half to death. It was all there. Every dollar of the 61,000 was hanging in the air of that barn, in the lights and the linen and the band. $61,000 borrowed against a house with my name on the deed by a hand that had practiced my signature until it got the capital H to lean. I found my seat. It was table 11, against the back wall, by the swinging door to the catering kitchen, where the servers came through with the trays, and the warm air of the dishwashers came out in gusts every time the door swung. I was seated with a great aunt who did not remember me, a college roommate of the bride's who spent the whole dinner on her phone, and an empty chair. From table 11, you could not actually see the head table without leaning. You could see the backs of things. I sat down in my navy dress with the pockets, and I put the blue folder on the empty chair beside me, and I folded my hands on the white linen, and I waited, because I have spent my whole life at the back of rooms, holding things up, and I knew how to wait. And then I saw Gloria Banks. She was 4 tables over, toward the middle, in a maroon church dress, with the beaded chain of her reading glasses just visible at her collar, sitting up very straight beside a man I took to be her husband. For one cold second, I did not understand it, and then I did, and the understanding of it was so perfect and so terrible that I had to look down at my hands. My mother had invited her. Of course she had. In a town like Tiffin, you invite the bank manager to the wedding, the same way you invite the pastor and the man who sells you your cars, because those are the people who matter. Those are the people you carry yourself in front of. Diane had stood at her kitchen table on Sycamore Street and written Gloria Banks on an envelope in her good handwriting and licked the stamp, and she had no idea, none at all, that she was mailing an invitation to the one woman in Seneca County who had already opened a fraud review against her. She had set the proof down at table 7 and put a chicken dinner in front of it. Gloria found my eyes across the room. She did not wave. She did not smile. She gave me one small nod, the kind you give across a rail when a receipt is cleared. And then she looked back at her plate, and I understood that she had come because I had told her, 3 days before, sitting at her desk, that the wedding was happening whether the review was finished or not, and she had said in that flat, procedural voice, "Well, then I expect I will see you there." I had not known what she meant. I knew now. Gloria Banks had come to keep the receipts in person. The dinner went the way those things go. There was chicken, or there was fish. There were speeches I could half hear from the back, the best man saying something about Cody in college that made the front tables roar. The bride's father going long and getting choked up. Cody looked handsome and sunburned and happy in a way I was glad to see, because whatever I am not a person who wanted my brother unhappy on his wedding day. I have never wanted any of them unhappy. That is the part they could never understand about me, the part my mother mistook for weakness for 33 years. I did not carry that house for 9 years because I was too dull to put it down. I carried it because somebody had to, and I was the one who could. And there is a kind of person who will hold a roof up over the heads of people who are laughing at her, year after year, and not say a word, because the alternative is letting it fall on someone who cannot bear the weight. I was that kind of person. I had been that kind of person my whole life. I was about to stop. The servers came through the swinging door behind me with the champagne, the real glass, and they moved down the tables filling flutes, and I felt the room begin to gather itself the way a room does before someone important stands up. I put my hand flat on the blue folder beside me on the empty chair. Through the cardboard, I could feel the shape of everything inside it. The 9 years of statements, The 108 withdrawals lined up like fence posts, the deed in its plastic sleeve, my name in county ink, the forged signature beside my real one, the wrong R, the missing tail, Gloria's review number in her steady block printing, and underneath all of it, at the very bottom, my grandfather's envelope, still sealed, with the line written under my name in his blocky hand. Open it when they say it out loud. Raymond Hollis had been dead for 4 years. He had driven me to the recorder's office in his truck the year I turned 24 and would not leave until my name was on that deed. And people had thought he was being difficult, a stubborn old man making a fuss over paperwork. He was not being difficult. He had watched them use me at every holiday table since I was a girl, watched my mother run her favorite words up the flagpole over the ham. We carry our own, we carry our own, while I did the carrying, and he had seen exactly where it was going. He had written something down and sealed it and handed it to me and told me not to open it until they said it out loud. For 4 years I had not known what he meant by it. I had carried that envelope in the folder the way you carry a stone in your pocket, a weight you stop noticing until your hand closes on it. I think, sitting at table 11 with the dishwasher air gusting at my back, I finally understood that my grandfather had known this exact night was coming. Not the barn, not the lights, not the champagne tower, but this. The moment they would say it out loud, in front of everyone, and I would finally be allowed to answer. A spoon rang against a glass at the head table. I leaned, the way you had to lean from table 11, and I saw my mother get to her feet. Diane was wearing slate blue, and she had had her hair done, and she looked, I will give her this, magnificent. The way a woman looks when she has spent money she does not have to stand in a room she cannot afford. She lifted her wine. The band went quiet. The 200 faces at the round tables turned up toward her like a field turning toward weather, and she smiled, that warm, wide smile that had talked creditors and neighbors and her own daughter into one more month for 30 years, and she began to thank everyone for coming. She thanked the bride's family. She thanked the Lord. She said that family was everything, that the Mercers had always known that whatever life threw at them, they had always, always carried their own. And the warmth of the room came up to meet her, and somebody near the front said, "Amen," soft and laughing. Then she found me. I felt it before I saw it, the way you feel a draft from an open door. Her eyes went past the good tables and the better tables and traveled all the way back to table 11 by the kitchen, and her smile changed, went fond and rueful, the smile she put on right before she said the thing she had decided to say, and she lifted her glass an inch higher toward me so that the heads began to turn and follow it back to where I sat. "And I want to thank my daughter Hannah for coming all this way," she said, and her voice carried, because she had always known how to make a voice carry. "Some of you know Hannah. She keeps to herself. We didn't even know if she'd make it today, but we always make sure there's a place for her, because that's what you do." A small pause, perfectly timed, the timing of a woman who has worked a room her whole life. "She's our charity case. Every family's got one. You just love them anyway." And the whole table laughed. It went out across the barn the way laughter does, the front tables first, the ones who could see her face, and then the middle, the people who had not quite heard, but laughed because the sound told them to. 200 people under the warm lights laughing easy into their champagne at the woman by the kitchen door. The college roommate beside me looked up from her phone and smiled vaguely at the joke she had missed. The great-aunt patted my hand without knowing why. Somewhere 4 tables over, Gloria Banks did not laugh. She set her glass down on the white linen, very quietly, and folded her hands, and waited. I did not feel my face get hot. I have wondered since whether I should have. whether there is something wrong in me, that the moment I had dreaded for 9 days arrived and landed, and I felt nothing go loose inside me at all. But I think the truth is simpler than that. I had already reconciled it. I had matched every payment to its month and every signature to its hand. And there is a particular calm that comes when the numbers are all the way done, when there is no error left to find, only the answer, sitting there clean and final, waiting to be read aloud. The laughter rolled over me and broke and went quiet, and my mother lowered her glass, satisfied, and reached for her chair. Under the table, at table 11, by the swinging door, I slid the blue folder off the empty seat and into my lap. I opened the flap. My fingers went past the statements and past the deed in its plastic sleeve, all the way to the bottom, and closed on the soft, worn corner of my grandfather's envelope. They had said it out loud. My thumb slid under the flap and broke the seal my grandfather had pressed shut 4 years before he passed. And the old glue gave all at once and without a sound, and I drew the single sheet of paper out into my lap under the white linen, while 200 people were still settling back into their chairs from the laugh my mother had handed them. He had written it in pencil, in the square block capitals he always used, because he said cursive was for people with something to hide. It was short. It was dated the same week he had driven me down to the Seneca County Recorder's office in his truck and sat in the hard chair by the counter with his hat on his knee until my name was on the deed in county ink, the week the clerks all thought he was a stubborn old man making a fuss over a piece of paper. Hannah, it said, if you are reading this, then they have finally said it out loud, with their mouths and not just their faces, in front of company, where they cannot tell you later that you took it wrong. You have been carrying that house and every soul in it since you were a girl, and they have let you, and they have called it something else, so they would not have to feel the shame of being carried. I put your name on the deed so that one day, on a day exactly like this one, you would be able to stop. You do not owe them the roof. Stand up out of your chair. Set the deed down on the table where every last one of them can read whose name is on it. Then go home to Sycamore Street. The porch light is yours. It always was. Grandpa, I read it twice. The band had started up again, something soft with the stand-up bass walking along under it, and the servers were moving down the far tables with the coffee, and my mother had settled back into her chair at the head table with the pleased, finished look of a woman who has said the thing she came to say and gotten the laugh she came to get. Something moved in my face that was not quite a smile. I folded my grandfather's letter back along its old crease and laid it in my lap, and I lifted the blue accordion folder off the empty chair beside me, and I stood up. For a moment nobody noticed, because nobody at a wedding expects the woman at the back table by the kitchen to rise. Then the great aunt beside me looked up, and the bride's roommate lowered her phone, and the turning started the way it always does at those tables, one face pulling the next, the soft noise of the room thinning out toward the back wall where I was standing in my navy dress with the pockets, the folder under my arm. I did not raise my voice. I never have. I do not get loud. I reconcile. I picked up the small fork beside my untouched plate and rang it against the rim of my water glass. 3 clear notes, the way you do, and the band heard it and folded the song down to nothing, and the last of the talking died table by table until the whole barn full of string lights was looking back toward table 11, 200 faces, and my mother's among them, the pleased look on it going still. Could I say a few words? I said. It was not really a question. I was already walking. I went up the center of the room between the round tables, past the better seats and the best ones, the folder in both hands now, and I watched my mother's face do the thing I had waited 9 days and, if I am honest with myself. 9 years to see it do. The fondness went out of it first, then the certainty. By the time I reached the head table, she had set her glass down and her mouth had gone small and careful, and she said my name once, low, the way you say a dog's name when it has gotten loose in the road. Hannah. Just that. A warning with nowhere left to go. I did not look at her for long. I looked at Cody, my brother, sunburned and handsome and confused in his good suit beside his bride in her champagne-colored dress. And I was sorry for him, because whatever was about to come down had been bought partly in his name, and he did not know that yet, either. Then I set my own glass on the white linen of the head table. I opened the blue accordion folder. I took out the deed in its plastic sleeve, and I laid it flat in front of 200 people, turned so the county seal faced up. This is the deed to the house at the end of Sycamore Street, I said, and my voice came out level and even and carried further than my mother's ever had, because a quiet voice in a silent room goes everywhere. It is recorded with Seneca County. There is one name on it. It is not my mother's name, and it is not my father's, and it has not been either of theirs for 9 years. I read it the way I read a line off a billing statement at the clinic, slow and exact, leaving no room for anyone to mishear me. The owner of record is Hannah Mercer. That is me. I have owned this house since I was 24 years old. The silence that came after that was a different kind than the laughing silence from before. I could hear the lights humming over the dance floor. Somewhere a fork touched a plate and stopped. I told them the rest in numbers, because numbers do not get excited and they do not exaggerate. And they were the only thing in that whole barn that had been telling the truth all night. Every month for 9 years, I said, $2,400 has come out of my account on the first and gone to the mortgage on this house. 108 payments, every one of them on time. I have the statements right here. I laid my hand flat on the folder. Nobody at this table has paid for that roof since I was in my 20s. They have lived under it, and they have called it carrying their own. And the bank can tell you, down to the cent, who was actually doing the carrying. My mother found her voice then. She did the thing she has always been able to do, turning to smile out at the room, light and warm, saying my name and the word honey. And then she's not well. She gets confused. The same easy words she had used on creditors and neighbors for 30 years to make trouble go quiet. A few faces near the front began to loosen, ready to be reassured, ready to laugh again. So I set the second page down beside the deed. This one is not a deed, I said. This one is a loan, a home equity loan, taken out 8 months ago against this house, the house with my name on it, $61,000. I let that number sit in the lights for a second. It paid for a barn an hour south of Tiffin, and 200 folding chairs, and a champagne tower, and a band, and a dress the color of good champagne, and some old debts besides. I never saw a dollar of it. I never signed for it. And then I laid down the last page, the one with the 2 signatures side by side, my real one and the other one, the way Gloria and I had set them out large at her desk, so that even from the back tables you could see the difference. This is my signature, I said, and I touched the left one. And this is the name that somebody wrote on a loan against my house and tried to make look like mine. Look at the R. Look at how the H leans the wrong way. Look at the tail that isn't there. I did not say the word for what that was. I did not have to. The page said it. The whole barn was leaning in toward the head table now, and my mother was not smiling anymore, and her hand had come up to the base of her throat, and the color had drained out of her face under the warm lights. until she was the palest thing in that beautiful borrowed room. That was when a chair scraped, 4 tables over, toward the middle, and Gloria Banks stood up in her maroon church dress with the beaded chain of her reading glasses swinging at her collar, and she folded her hands in front of her the way she folded them across her desk, and she spoke into the quiet in that flat, procedural voice that does not rise at the end of a single sentence. "My name is Gloria Banks," she said. "I manage the branch at Heartland Credit Union on Washington Street in Tiffin. I have handled the account on that house for 9 years." She let her eyes travel once around the room, unhurried, a teller counting down a drawer. "There is a fraud review open on that loan as of last week," she said. "The file number is printed on the page in front of you. The signature did not match the one we have had on record since this young woman was 24 years old, and when a signature does not match, we are required to act. The loan has been frozen pending the outcome. No further draws can be made against it." Then she sat back down, smoothed her dress over her knees, and reached for her water glass. "Finished. The way you sit down after you have read the verified total into the record. 200 people did the arithmetic at the same time, and that is a particular sound. A room understanding a thing all at once, a low collective shifting like wind crossing a field. The ants, the neighbors from up and down Sycamore Street, the man who had sold them their cars, sitting there at table 4 in his good tie. They had all just been told, in numbers that do not exaggerate and by the woman from the credit union herself, that the charity case had been the one writing the checks the whole time, and that the toast they had laughed at 20 minutes earlier had been raised by a woman standing in a barn she had borrowed against a house that was never hers to borrow against. My mother had a saying. I had heard it over every ham and every turkey of my whole life, said warm and proud with her glass half lifted. "We carry our own." She had said it again that very night, up at the front of the room, before her eyes went searching for me at the back. Family is everything. The Mercers have always carried their own. I looked at her now, across the deed and the frozen loan and the 2 signatures lying there in the lights, and I did not say it back to her. I did not need to. The pages had already said it for me, in county ink and bank ledger, exactly who in that family had been carried, and exactly who had been doing the carrying for 9 years, with both hands, and never once been thanked for it. For 9 years, I had held that roof up over the heads of people who laughed at me, because somewhere in me I believed that if I ever set it down, it would come down on someone who could not take the weight. Standing there at the head table, with the lights humming and my brother staring, and my mother's hand pressed to her throat, I understood that I had been wrong about that one thing, and only that one thing. It was not going to fall on anybody. It was a roof I owned outright. I could simply stop holding it up and step out from under it and let the people who had spent 9 years calling it theirs find out for the first time in their lives exactly what it weighed. So that is what I did. I left the deed and the loan and the 2 signatures lying on the white linen for anyone at that wedding who cared to walk up and read them. I closed the blue accordion folder over my grandfather's letter. I did not finish my wine. I turned around and walked back down the center of the room, past the round tables and the champagne tower, and the band that had forgotten to start playing again, out through the open mouth of the barn and into the cool gray evening, and I got into my car and I drove the hour north, out of the string lights, and back up toward Tiffin, toward Seneca County, toward Sycamore Street, the whole way in a quiet so clean it felt like the first quiet I had ever owned outright. The review at Heartland Credit Union took the better part of 2 months. I sat with Gloria Banks twice more at her desk, while the forensic people laid the loops and tails of a name I had been writing since I was a girl against the careful copy somebody had made of it. And in the end, the loan was voided, struck dead. The $61,000 left standing as a debt with no house behind it and no quiet daughter to draft the payment out of. Downtown at the recorder's office, a clerk I had never met drew one line through the false lien in the record, stamped the release, and slid a certified copy across the counter to me, and the title to the house on Sycamore Street stood clean again, one name on it, mine. And before she closed the file, Gloria put a flag on the property and on the account so that no loan could ever again move against that house unless the living owner whose name was on the deed stood at her counter in person with identification and signed it where she could watch the pen. It would hold for whoever owned the house after me, too. That was the part she made sure of last. That evening, I sat down on the front steps of the White House at the end of Sycamore Street, the one with the porch that has sagged a little lower every year I have owned it. And I watched the light go down behind the maples the way it has gone down behind them my whole life. My grandfather's letter lay open in my lap. The porch light was on over my head, the one he told me was mine. The blue folder lay closed on the boards beside me. I did not pick it up.